It's January 2014. A Japanese player named Moken is on the final boss of Darius Gaiden. He's on pace to defeat a world record set by a player named Himu that has stood for nearly 2 decades. Moken has intentionally drawn the fight out so he can break the boss's parts. Most of the time, destroying part of a boss nets about 30,000 points, which is still a significant amount in a game this optimized. But the Root V final boss, Risk Storage, is different. Destroying its tail increases the player's score by 900,000, nearly a tenth of the world record just by itself. He does it. And in doing so, Moken is now playing the game of his life, over 300,000 points ahead of his previous personal best. But if he dies here, or uses a bomb, he'll lose everything. For the next few minutes, Moken has no choice but to be perfect. Moken is panicking. He needs to wait for Risk Storage to do a certain attack that will let him earn a few more points, but if he pushes it too much, it will self-destruct, ultimately losing him the record. The combination of skill and luck required to score this high is immense. It's been 19 years since a player was last in this position. If Moken chokes now, he might not get another shot. And then, this happens. A new category world record for one of the most beloved shoot-'em-ups of all time. It's a record that still stands today. Moken uploaded a video of his run, which is somewhat rare in the Japanese STG community. Here's that video, 11 years later. 0 likes, 600 views. Moken made history. He must have put hundreds, if not thousands of hours of practice in to accomplish it. And no one seemed to care. Why not? Believe it or not, there used to be a time when video game high scores made the news.
George Macy is an average teenager who spends a lot of time here at Mother's, but not much money. He is so skillful at playing the game Defender that he can make a single quarter last for an hour or more by earning additional plays or attack waves. One day last month, at age 14, George racked up 1,774,125 points. No one else has ever come close, at least in the known universe.
When Tim McVeigh, not the terrorist, became the first to score 1 billion points in Nibbler, his town declared it Tim McVeigh Day and gave him the key to the city.
What the is Nibbler?
Somehow, despite video games being more popular now than they've ever been, and game competitions like the International, EVO, and the League of Legends World Championships drawing thousands in person and millions online, the world of competitive high scores has almost completely vanished. So, what happened to high scores? In 1982, video games and arcades were inseparable. While Atari, Intellivision, and Coleco made valiant attempts to bring games directly to living rooms, home consoles were primarily focused on producing inferior copies of whatever was popular at the arcade. And things were very popular at the arcade. From 1980 to 82, the number of gaming centers in the US doubled from 5 to 10,000. Pac-Man fever had swept across the country. Millions of players were putting billions of dollars in quarters into machines. It was the golden era of arcades. Walking up to any of these cabinets, the first thing you see is the high scores. When the game is running, the high score is always on screen, daring you to beat it. And these high scores weren't placed there for a fun bonus. They were absolutely necessary to make the business of video games viable. To explain that, let's take a look at Pac-Man. This is Pac-Man. More specifically, this is a printed circuit board for an original Pac-Man machine. It has a total of 24 kilobytes of read-only memory. That's 16 for all the game logic and 8 for the graphics. Take a look at the like and subscribe icons below this video. Those 2 images take up more memory than the entirety of Pac-Man. As a fun experiment, you could try clicking both of those buttons to help that information sink in. With such extreme data limitations, arcade games of the era had to be simple. Many games like Pac-Man, Dig Dug, and Missile Command only had a single screen. Donkey Kong was like the 80s equivalent of Red Dead Redemption 2 with 4 whole visually distinct levels. This was the puzzle for game designers. How do you make a game that people will keep putting quarters into with so little content? High scores solved this problem. Scoring systems created a metagame that gave players a reason to keep playing even if they'd seen everything a game had to offer. It didn't matter that all 255 levels of Pac-Man looked identical. You didn't play Pac-Man to fight a final boss or reach an ending. You played it to see if you could beat the high score, or at least beat your high score. And as it turns out, this simple competitive hook was so successful that player skill levels got incredibly high, and it became a problem for arcade operators. Expert players could play some of these games for hours at a time. Victor Sandberg played Missile Command for 56 straight hours when he got the world record. Scott Safran played Asteroids for 60 hours for his. Tim McVeigh spent 45 straight hours playing Nibbler.
So you kind of got to plan your bathroom breaks, you build your lives up on the game, and then you can take a break for a little while.
Developers were financially incentivized to make mechanically simple but difficult games that used high scores as the primary hook to drive repeat business. The end result was a perfect organism. Game manufacturers were selling machines, arcade operators were collecting quarters, and players were lining up to challenge games over and over and over again. It was the absolute peak for the activity of staring at a machine and trying to make a number go up. But then, the number went down.
2 years ago, our visit to Atari found a company gorging itself with profits. Virtually overnight, more than 6,000 people lost their jobs. The company collapsed.
From 1983 to 85, the video game market fell by 66%. It was one of the sharpest industry declines in the 20th century. $28 billion in annual revenue went up in smoke. The home console market was obliterated, falling by 97%. Atari went bankrupt and was forced to sell to Namco for pennies on the dollar. Many arcades stopped buying new machines and began to defer maintenance on existing ones. The writing was on the wall, and to arcade players, the message was familiar.
Will it be you? Will your family be the first to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System?
This boy is doing more than just playing a video game. He has entered another world. In just 3 years, they've sold more than 11 million hardware units at about $100 each. By the end of this year, they hope to have their system in 1 out of every 8 American homes.
Nintendo proved that home consoles didn't have to be expensive, pale imitations of arcade games. They didn't have to be any of the things that arcade games were. They could be long, they could be easy, they could be this. And while most games kept them around for a while, they didn't need high scores.
Don't call me. Don't come by my house. We're done.
From that point on, Nintendo and the AAA games industry in general have mostly stayed away from high scores. Even when they are included, they're usually an afterthought or an accessory to some other objective, and you rarely see high scoreboards. It's not that players lost interest in competition. Games like League of Legends, Fortnite, and Rocket League are industries unto themselves, with esports stars that make more money than most professional athletes. Player-driven competition is huge too. The world of video game challenge runs like Pokemon Nuzlocke and Dark Souls no-hit playthroughs are some of the most watched content on YouTube. Speedrunning has become so popular that GDQ, an organization that hosts charity speedrunning events, is one of the most followed Twitch channels and has raised about $50 million for cancer research. This 2-hour-long video about the history of speedruns in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, a game that's nearly 40 years old, has over 4 million views. People love to watch and participate in gaming competition, whether it's brand new games like Marvel Rivals or dusty old ones like Super Mario Bros. Competitive gaming is bigger than it's ever been, and it's growing exponentially. But high scores haven't made a comeback, and it doesn't look like that's about to change soon. Scoring is about player versus game. The competitive aspect happens on a meta level and doesn't translate well to live competition, which makes it unviable as an esport, even if there were popular enough games designed around score. Everyone has the context to understand at a basic level why it's impressive that someone can beat Super Mario Bros. In under 5 minutes, because everyone has played Mario or a game like it. 5 minutes is a short amount of time to beat any game. Score is way more arbitrary. In some games, 10 million points is huge, but in others it's nothing. You need exposure to the games to appreciate the skill necessary to be good at them, something that isn't nearly as important for speedrunning. In another generation or two, players like Mokun could be forgotten to time. It's becoming increasingly rare for even mid-sized studios to put out new shoot-'em-ups, and Space Invaders is probably the closest thing to a AAA shmup that we'll ever see. As the communities of players who love classic arcade games get older, not enough young people are discovering them for themselves. In a few decades, there may be no one left with the skill or interest to get new high scores in any of these classic games. Some people say high scores are dead. But there was a time in 1983 where people said the same thing about video games. If there's one thing I've learned from this challenge so far, it's that the difference between failure and success is the number of times you're willing to try. And sometimes, all it takes is one more credit.
The Nintendo! Holy moly! Alright! With the gun! Alright!
If you're interested in watching my very low-scoring 1cc run of Darius Gaiden, I put a link to the full run in the description.